Welcome to Indianapolis, Jets 360 live here at the Combine presented by Atlantic Health System. Joined now by Kim Jones. I'm Ethan Greenberg, and this is Kim Jones of NFL Network. Kim, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Ethan.
What Combine is this for you? What number?
Oh, I don't even know.
I'm not trying to date you, I promise.
As a writer and now as NFL Network, I would say probably 11.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And how has this week evolved since year 1 to year 11? Before we start talking Jets here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a lot bigger, and my role versus when I was a writer, obviously I was doing a much different job than now when I'm on the field, on the floor for the drills and everything else, up close and personal with the prospects, and I love that. So it's a lot different.
All right. So let's talk some Jets. This wouldn't be Jets 360 Live without Jets talk.
Absolutely.
You cover the team throughout the season. You know this team very well. Adam Gase and Mike McCagnon spoke yesterday. What did you take away from Coach Gase's press conference?
I thought it was, and it's obvious, but the idea that the Jets can have peace of mind that they have their quarterback is something that you cannot measure. You can't measure peace of mind anyway, right? There's no quantity that we can measure with peace of mind, but you know when you have it. And this is clearly an organization that has peace of mind that they have their guy in Sam. Now they can build around him. And now they can build a defense that they obviously hope responds well to Greg Williams and becomes a more productive unit front to back. We know the back's good. Leonard Williams up front does a nice job. Henry Anderson had a good season. But you got to fill in some blanks there. And they certainly have the money along with the draft picks to make those changes. A
couple things to point out. Coach Gase did say the Jets will stick with a 3-4 front.
Yeah, he did.
And you mentioned Henry Anderson. He's someone that flourished in the Jets system last year in a 3-4. He does have an expiring contract. It's almost March 13th when free agency begins. But where do you expect the Jets to go early? Because Mike McCagnon said yesterday one of the focal points will be to add pieces around Sam Darnold.
Right.
But it also seems like the Jets are going to be looking on the defense side of the ball as well.
Yeah, and Henry Anderson would be a guy you'd want back,
for sure.
Right? I mean, certainly at the right price tag, but the Jets can also extend a little bit there with the money they have available. You don't want to overpay like crazy, but a guy that means a lot to your group and should be handled that way, in my opinion. So there's that with Anderson. Why not Le'Veon Bell? Why not the ultimate guy?
You like the move?
I do.
If they do pursue him?
I do, because I've talked to people who are in and around the Pittsburgh Steelers who say he's a good teammate, comes to work prepared. There's no issue there. His issue there last year was with the tag. Yeah. It wasn't with the other stuff. So if you can get Le'Veon Bell, he instantly helps a young quarterback, any quarterback. Listen, he'd instantly help Tom Brady. I mean, he instantly helps the quarterback. He instantly gives an outlet to the quarterback. He instantly helps the run game. Yep. He instantly helps an O-line that we anticipate some changes for the New York Jets on the O-line. So think about what one player who you're going to have to pay a lot for, but think about where he helps and how much, and that is significant.
You mentioned the offensive line. Mike McCagnon said yesterday that the Jets will be looking heavily into adding the position. Right now, James Carpenter, the Iron Man for the Jets over the past couple seasons, went on IR, expiring contract. Spencer Long no longer with the team. Jonathan Harrison, who started 8 games for the Jets at center, expiring contract. So I know Mike said that they're going to look into it, but do you have any idea, maybe a guy or two that stick out?
Yeah, it's tough right now. You look at this draft, and the one thing I've heard a little bit about this O-line draft is quantity, not quality. Now, that doesn't mean there's not quality players. It means there are a lot of players, and that the number of players is overwhelming compared to the quality. You got to find the right one. There's no Quentin Nelson in this draft. You're not going to find him. I'm not sure you're going to find a first-round interior player in this draft. You're going to have tackles go in the first round. Is Jonah Williams from Alabama a tackle, though? Right. I don't know that. And does he want to play inside, and will he play inside? Now, listen, once you're getting a paycheck and the team drafts you, you think you do what the team tells you to do, but I'm not sure that he's keen on moving inside. So there's a question there with him. There are other tackles in this draft. There's who you could go with. There are going to be some small school guys who emerge coming out of this combine, I think. But everyone in the league needs O-linemen. Everyone. The Giants and Jets both do, and so does just about every other team in the league. So, you look at Washington's offensive line that actually on paper is a pretty good line. Yeah. They had so many injuries last season, they were truly Band-Aiding the unit by the end of the year. They had no one left.
I'm glad you mentioned Washington because I was speaking to some of your NFL Network colleagues earlier today, and they said they could see Jonah Williams playing guard similar to when Brandon Sheriff came out of college. Yeah, when he came out of college, he was a tackle. He kicked inside, became a Pro Bowler for the Redskins. Yep. So that'll be interesting to watch. Now, you mentioned the Giants.
Brandon Sheriff was also a whatever I can do to help the team guy.
I got you.
I think I'm not saying Jonah Williams or anyone else is not, but I do think that's significant when you talk about a guy doing that.
And I think teams will find that out, especially here. We interview these guys.
Yep.
Now, you mentioned the Giants. You cover the Giants. Yesterday, Mike Maccagnan said that he has no problem trading with the Giants. I mean, he said he'll trade with anybody if, in fact, the trade is right to trade down, to trade out of 3. Last year, the Jets moved from 6 to 3. Right. Could you see the Jets doing something similar, but doing the literal opposite from going from 3 to 6 with the Giants?
I mean, I guess so.
It just feels like a rarity.
If the Giants want to move up, if they have a guy that they have their heart set on and want to move up to get him, I would be careful at 3 of giving up that prime defensive player. If Josh Allen is there at 3, I would be hesitant to move out of that because Josh Allen is highly respected on and off the football field as a player and as a person, and he's an absolute physical freak who could help the Jets immediately. Yeah. So if he's there, do you really want to move out? If Quinnen Williams is still there, a guy that is so explosive and disruptive and has only played nose guard at Alabama for 1 year, and some people look at that as a negative. Why isn't it a positive? Yeah. A lot of Alabama kids come into the league having played some of their best ball in college. Well, this guy had a great season, but still seems to have a lot of upside to continue improving, and he certainly has the physical talent. So if to me, if one of those difference makers is there at 3, and someone's going to have to be there at 3. There are only 2 picks before you.
It's inevitable.
I would be hesitant to move out if you love one of them.
All right. That is Kim Jones of NFL Network. Kim, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you,
Enjoy your 11th Combine here in Indianapolis.
11th, 12th, who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting at this point? All right, Kim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was Kim Jones of NFL Network. All right, so there's a lot to uncover here, and we're going to have a great show momentarily. Dane Brugler of The Athletic is going to come on. We're going to dive into the draft. We're really going to get into some good stuff. This is a very talented edge group, and we're going to talk about every single one of these guys. I mentioned to Kim about trading back. Now, that's an option that Mike Maccagnan has said he's open to. He's open to fielding any calls, and we're going to start getting into some of these guys right now with Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Dane, thank you very much for joining us.
Always.
You excited?
I
This is
am.
your wheelhouse.
This is it's a busy week. It's a way to kind of cross-check what you've been seeing over the season and watching tape and just making sure that it matches up with your initial impressions in terms of athletic testing, the interview process, the medicals. That's why we're here. That's why the Combine was invented. That's why it's such a big deal to find out Nick Bosa, number 1. He's the top pass rusher. Medicals need to come back clean. He missed most of the season with abdominal groin issue, and he's healthy now, but any long-term effects, anything that we have to be worried about, he's the best player in this draft, but the medical evaluation will be paramount to his final draft grade.
All right, I'm not going to lie. I've been clamoring for this moment because I listen to you talk about all the guys in the draft. I listen to your podcast. I read your articles, but now this is all Jets talk, so I'm excited. So this is what we're going to do. I know that this group is very talented at edge, the draft class in particular.
Absolutely.
And you mentioned Nick Bosa at the top. What I want to do is run through, let's say, top 5 edge guys, maybe top 6 edge guys, and I want you to give a quick synopsis on their style of game, what they're good at, and then one thing that they can improve or need to improve in order to be successful on the next level.
Okay.
And you mentioned Nick Bosa. Let's start with Nick. What do you think?
He's a carbon copy of his brother. They move in similar ways. They both have an advanced understanding of how to use their hands, and I think that's what makes them so different than your normal, 20-year-old, 21-year-old pass rusher coming into the league. They just already have an advanced understanding of how to break down the rhythm of blockers and get to the pocket. So that's really the handwork, the technical understanding. That's what stands out more than anything else. If an area that he needs to get better at, I think once he gets locked up, shedding blocks, not putting himself in position where he can get locked up. But it's more, we'll see how he tests here too, how he compares to his brother.
Do you think he's going to test well?
I think he will. And, he missed most of the year, but he's been training the last 7-8 weeks, full health. His brother didn't blow anybody away with a 40-yard dash, anything like that, but he had a 6.89 3-cone drill. And at 270 pounds, that's ridiculous. If Nick Bosa is able to come in with a similar time in the 3-cone drill, that'll be a big number for him.
All right, this is Jets 360 Live Combine Special, presented by Atlantic Health System. Ethan Greenberg, Dane Brugler of The Athletic. All right, that was Nick Bosa. So now let's go to Josh Allen out of Kentucky. First, how big is the gap between Bosa and Allen? And then second, what does Allen do well? What does he need to work at?
I do think there's a gap. I think more so than other people. I think Josh Allen's kind of getting pegged as that. If you don't get Bosa, don't worry, Josh Allen's right there. I think there's a little bit more of a gap than people are letting on. And that's nothing against Josh Allen. He's a terrific player, a terrific prospect, and really the poster prospect for why you should come back for your senior year. At this point last year, he was a borderline top 100 player, comes back for senior year, adds 20 pounds, expands his pass rush repertoire with his understanding of what he's doing out there. It showed in the production and then on the tape with what he did this year for Kentucky. Really versatile edge rusher. He can drop in space. He can play off the edge, can play on his feet. Really athletic. Where he needs to get better is just as a consistent run defender. He's a much better run defender than he was a year ago, but in terms of taking on blocks, and that's a big thing for a lot of these guys playing on the edge. Can he do that consistently going up against NFL tackles? That'll be a big question for him, and something that when I think about him, I think about the Georgia game, and he had some struggles in that game. But can he do it consistently? Shed blocks, get to the set the edge, do these things that he's going to have to do in the NFL.
Yes or no? Do you worry that he's feasted on weaker competition?
He played in the SEC, so it's something where he faced a lot of NFL caliber tackles, but nothing compared to what he's going to see when he gets to the NFL. He's going to have to the same step that he took from his junior to senior season. He's going to have to take that similar step as he goes to be a rookie. You love the versatility. It's just he needs to get better in some areas to really, if you're going to take him with a second or third overall pick, just to justify that, it needs to get better in some areas.
All right, I have 3 more guys I want to ask you about. Well, I think 4 more guys. Let's go to Rashan Gary because he's someone that you often hear, the production didn't quite match the talent. Mm-hmm. So what does he do well? Because he's still a top prospect in this draft.
Well, what's the scouting motto? It's traits over production. Production's great. You want to see it. Mm-hmm. But Joey Bosa, his final year at Ohio State, had 5 sacks. Didn't have great production, but the traits were outstanding. And that's with Rashan Gary. He was the number 1 player out of high school, did not live up to the hype at Michigan, but you know what? The traits are outstanding. He's a ridiculous athlete, 280 pounds. He's going to run really well here at the Combine, and it's going to inflate his stock into the possibly the top 5, possibly the top 3. So he's going to be a really interesting player to watch. It's all about pass rush plan with him. He needs to connect the dots better. He has the tools. Can he connect the dots to be a more efficient and streamlined pass rusher?
All right. How about let's go to Gainesville, Florida. EA's not here with me right now, but he's with us on the show. He's a Florida Gator alum. Jachai Polite.
Yeah.
The thing that sticks out to me, at least when I see his stats, 6 forced fumbles this past season. What do you think of him as a player? Because it seems that he really gets after it.
Oh, he does.
And he's a hunter.
He's a quarterback assassin is what he is.
Ooh, I like that term. Jets fans will like that term.
His game is built around speed, both at first step and then his closing speed. He can bend. He's very flexible edge rusher. He can get around blockers and really disrupt what the quarterback's doing, force the quarterback to move his feet. The big question with him is, can he be an early down player, hold up versus the run? Because at Florida, he didn't need to be. He came off the bench as a sub-package guy, as a rusher, just pin his ears back and go. Can he be a more complete player? I think he's certainly capable, but, can he get there and how early? What's his role as a rookie? Is he more of a sub-package guy as a rookie and then a starter in year 2? Or, what's his trajectory and ceiling? How are you going to use him? I think he's ideal for a 3-4. with just the way he's built. But he was actually a defensive tackle his freshman year. He was up to 270 pounds. He saw some time at 3 technique. So I think he has the ability to put on some more weight. But can he hold up consistently versus the run? We know he can do it versus the pass, and that's what gets you paid in the NFL. So that's why Jachai Polite's going to go early.
Hypothetically, the Jets find a trade partner, move back, let's say, to 10 or no further back than 10. Is that too early to take Polite?
Oh, I don't think so. I mean, it's as long as you are comfortable with your role for him. And the other thing is you have to be comfortable with his character. That's something I've heard from scouts, just maturity-wise and being comfortable with the person. The interview process will be huge for him. I expect him to blow up the drills. I don't have any questions about that. How will he do during interviews when teams really press him and has a chance to show himself? Will he impress? Will he give teams doubt? I know some scouts are going into it with some question marks, so he'll have a chance to answer those and maybe flip the script, change the narrative here at the Combine.
All right. I've asked a lot of draft guys about this guy. I want to move off of the edge guys because we could talk about these guys forever. Want to ask about Devin White.
Okay.
I love Devin White.
Yeah.
I think everyone that watches this show knows I love Devin White. Everyone at work knows I love Devin White. Just like watching him play. He's a football player. So at what point is too early to take Devin White?
I think it depends on how you envision using him.
Could he play outside?
Yeah, I think so. Play speed, play violence, both off the charts. The way he plays, the way he moves around, the anger and aggression that he plays with, no questions about that. My questions with him, can he hold up in coverage? Can he play a man? Can he draw, and make plays in zone? I don't think he's on the same level as Roquan Smith, who was the 7th overall pick in last year's draft. But with that said, if you're going to use Devin White as a blitzer, as a guy that you're going to kind of move around, then I could understand you making the case why he should be a top 10 pick, maybe even a top 5 pick. The Buccaneers at 5, that would make some sense in that defense. So Devin White's a really interesting player because I have some questions. Eager to see how he does in the 3-cone and some of the change of direction drills. But no question about the play speed, the play violence is off the charts.
Let's stick to LSU, DBU. Greedy Williams, what are your thoughts? Because when you look at him, he seems a little light,
He's slender.
Yeah, slender would be – that's a great word to describe Greedy Williams. But it's good football. Is he your CB1?
Coming into the Combine, he is, but it's not. There's not a wide margin there. I really like Byron Murphy from Washington. Joejuan Williams from Vanderbilt is really intriguing. A lot to like about a lot of these corners. With Greedy, is he competitive enough?
Yeah.
Some of these teams, they need their corners to be highly competitive, hold up in the run game. Other teams can be a little more lax in terms, can he cover? Can he get his guy on the ground? That's all we care about. With Greedy, he kind of mailed it in towards the end of the season. He knew he was going pro. You saw it on tape. He left some production on the field, but when this guy's dialed in, he has the athletic ability, the ball skills, the length, where he can cover a guy up and down the field. So coming into the Combine, he is my number 1 corner, and I think he's the number 1 corner for a lot of these teams. But I think he'll test well. But the interview process will be important for him. Just making sure teams are comfortable with the person and the competitive nature that he has. All
right, now let's switch to the offensive side of the ball. DK Metcalf made the rounds on social media with his post of him working out.
Yeah. If I looked like that, I'd be posting pictures like that too.
Yeah.
So I don't blame him.
I think if I looked like that, I wouldn't own a shirt.
Exactly.
So DK Metcalf, very talented player in the sense of the physical traits.
He's a freak. Absolutely.
He's a freak. What does he need to prove here till April 25th to solidify himself as wide receiver 1? And where do you think he ends up going in round 1?
And that's a great question because you could see a team in the top 15 pulling the trigger, just banking on those physical, freakish traits, obviously translating, but then the rest catching up. He needs to become a better route runner, more seasoned. For a guy as that big, he doesn't play as strong at the catch point, as dominant as you would expect. So he needs to get better in that area. And then the medicals would be important for him.
For sure.
He played 3 seasons at Ole Miss. 2 of them ended prematurely because of injury. A foot his freshman year, which he redshirted, then this past year with a neck injury. Non-spinal, he should be okay, but still something you have to check. Here at the Combine, he's going to test really well on the 40-yard dash. Straight line speed is awesome. How does he look? We know he's rocked up. We know, he looks the part. But is he tight? Does he move? If you're a tight athlete, you can't escape the three-cone drill without looking tight and stiff. So how does he look in the short shuttle, the three-cone, the change of direction stuff, and then just showing that he is advancing himself as a route runner, getting better in that area, because that is one key area where he just needs to get better to become a more complete receiver. We know the physical traits are there and things you can't coach, and because of that, I think it is possible we see him go in the top 15. You look at the Bills in the top 10 or one of these other wide receiver needy teams. But I think it's more likely we see him go in the back half of round one. Maybe the Ravens, they need a big-time receiver. Pair him up with Lamar Jackson. That's a possibility. But this receiver class has a lot of options. So I think a lot of teams are going to say, we'll wait to the second round, get our Kelvin Harmon or N'Keal Harry, those guys. But I think there's a good bet DK Metcalf is the first receiver off the board.
All right, I could talk to you for hours, but I have one final question for you before we let you go so you can make your rounds here. Dane Brugler of The Athletic. You ready for this one?
What you got?
Who are your guys? I'm not talking about the best players. I'm not talking about the round one guys. I'm talking about the guys where you say, you know what? I just think that guy's going to be a really good football player.
Okay, here's a guy he's not going to go first round, probably won't go second round, but third round, fourth round, Jelani Tavai from Hawaii. He's a linebacker.
The linebacker,
yeah. I'm a big fan of his. I've been singing his praises. And he's kind of out of sight, out of mind. He hurt a shoulder, so he missed the Senior Bowl. He plays at Hawaii, so not a lot of people know about him. He's not a big-name guy. But I tell you what, this guy can play. He's the third or fourth round version of a Leighton Vander Esch. A three-down player, gives you hybrid abilities to cover, can play the run, can rush, can do a lot of things. He's not going to work out here because he has a shoulder issue, but his pro day, I think he'll show off that athleticism. And so Jelani Tavai, if you're looking for a linebacker with three-down potential, I think he's your guy.
All right, Dane Brugler, thank you very much.
Thank
Enjoy
you.
the rest of your time in Indianapolis.
Appreciate it.
You got to read Dane on The Athletic. It's a great read, and follow him on Twitter as well, DP Brugler. This is Jets 360 Live, the Combine Special, presented by Atlantic Health System. All right, we have a loaded show. We had Kim Jones of NFL Network. We had Dane Brugler of The Athletic. Now joining me, Field Yates of ESPN, Mr. Fantasy Football. Field Yates, thank you for joining me.
This does not feel fair to me right now.
Why not?
Like, I'm trying to figure out what the equivalent is. Like, I feel like you guys have asked me to replace Curtis Martin at running back for the New York Jets. You just go from Dane Brugler to me, like, what is going on here,
we got a star-studded lineup. It's a good team
I appreciate
today.
You having me on.
We appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
All right. You ready to rock?
Let's do it. Yes, of course, yeah.
Free agency's around the corner.
Yeah.
Jets got a lot of money to spend.
Yeah.
What's first? What's first on the docket?
What I would say first is every player that's available is on the Jets' radar, in my opinion.
All right.
Take away the quarterbacks, right? But like every other position to me feels like you have the allocation, you have the money allocated, and you can spend there. Listen, you want to have a good quarterback, and you want to have a good backup quarterback, certainly. But everywhere else in football, you can never have enough depth. This year in the draft, there's an excellent group of front seven players. Also some good ones that could be available in free agency. Wide receiver could be a need. Not a great wide receiver class in free agency, but the Jets have the money to spend. So maybe tight end and quarterback are the two spots that you say, all right, like you don't want to dip the toe too significantly financially. Other than that, though, you can find offensive linemen in free agency. As a matter of fact, that sometimes is the best way to find offensive linemen.
You have a couple favorite guys on the O-line?
So in terms of like position by position, probably the best left tackle is Trent Brown. Played for the Patriots this past year after playing for the 49ers for 3 years prior to that. Big Hulk. I mean, we're talking 6'8", huge. 6'8", 6'9", big, long, powerful guy. Played his best football this past year. Sounds like not a franchise tag candidate for New England. Along the interior of the offensive line, there's some good players. Matt Paradise of the New York Jets, a good player. Obviously the Jets moving on from Spencer Long earlier this offseason. Now a Buffalo Bill. Maybe a void is there. And Matt Paradise, very reliable player.
Coming off a foot injury, though.
Are you
concerned at all about that?
From what I understand, medically he'll be okay by the time training camp rolls around, if not sooner than that probably. So I'm not worried about the availability for the season. 29 years old, it's a little bit of a different age consideration, but a very good player. Once he got to the Broncos, became an every down player, every snap player for them. So very good player there. And offensive linemen tend to cost a lot of money in free agency now. They don't come cheap. But we'll also see is that for the NFL, there's the initial wave of free agency of guys that don't have a team, and then all of a sudden guys get a job and somebody else loses a job as a result of that. So always keep an eye on the second wave of free agency to fill in some of these holes.
And Mike Maccagnan did say yesterday that the Jets will look into the O-line, especially in free agency. And this is Jets 360 Live here in Indianapolis. Field Yates of ESPN, Ethan Greenberg of NewYorkJets.com. This show is presented by Atlantic Health System. Now, Mike Maccagnan also said the focal point of this offseason, shocker, building around Sam Darnold.
Sure, yeah.
So you hear the name Le'Veon Bell kicked around a lot. Let's not talk about Le'Veon Bell anymore.
Yep.
Who else do you think could be a fit for the Jets that's named not Le'Veon Bell?
So specific to the running back position or just anywhere on
anybody.
offense?
I know Tevin Coleman's a hot topic, but let me ask you this. Do you think Tevin Coleman, after being the backup or the 1B guy, could be the 1A guy somewhere else? And what makes you believe that, if so?
So if he was to sign with the Jets, I don't know that he's necessarily the 1A unto himself because I think Isaiah still fits into the mixture. Isaiah Crowell, now 1 year into a 4-year contract.
I actually think that fans forget about Isaiah Crowell.
Sure, I think so too. And I think that sometimes what we don't latch onto is reliability. Isaiah never missed a game in his career when he signed with the Jets. Guy that's been there, done that. Doesn't have a lot of home runs on his resume. But
he had a couple this season.
He did this year, and he kind of does the right thing at the right time, which is not as glitzy and as sort of attractive as sometimes you see these home run hitters. Tevin Coleman sounds like he's probably gone from Atlanta. Sounds like they're prepared. It's hard to pay two guys at that spot, and they've already got Devontae Freeman under contract at a big number. One-cut guy is typically his style, pretty decisive runner, caught the ball okay in Indiana, a lot of speed coming out. I think he probably can fit. We saw with Adam Gase, and you're always sort of trying to figure out from a previous head coaching job what applies to the next one. Felt like in Miami, a rotation of backs was pretty regular. I mean, Frank Gore, Kenyon Drake last year, Kalen Ballage at the end of the season. Prior to that, we had, or they had, I should say, there were various guys that were rolling through. Jay Ajayi for a little while before he was traded to Miami, traded to Philadelphia from Miami. So I don't think it's ever going to be like a singular back that's handling the workload by himself.
All right. Let's talk about the receivers, but not the available guys. I want to talk about the guys on the Jets roster. Sure, Mike McCagnon said that the Jets are going to build around Sam Darnold. That's what's expected around the league. But the Jets have a pair of good receivers in Quincy Enunwa and Robbie Anderson, and they locked up Quincy before the end of the season. So what do you think this group could do, assuming they add a couple pieces either in free agency or the draft?
So you got to figure out, obviously, where you tender Robbie, restricted free agents, which you can't do a long-term deal, but the starting point is often deciding which tender, first, second, or original round tender for Robbie. So I would think that a second-round tender would probably get the job done, right? Nice little raise for Robbie. Probably team. It's rare that we see offer sheets extended for second-round picks, but if so, the Jets have a chance to match. In terms of, and they mentioned Quincy, obviously, 4-year extension right at the end of the season that locks up not just a good player, but the kind of guy you want to reward, right? Tremendous person, guy that's homegrown talent, does things the right way, probably helps the younger guys get better on a daily basis. So building from within, I think maybe it's because the position is not as attractive, just like from a highlight standpoint as wide receiver running back. Like Chris Herndon kind of emerged is like one of the better third day picks.
First, absolutely.
Like of last year, like one of the best.
Yep.
Pretty impressive. So I think that as much as you might say, like, we got to address wide receiver, it's also a byproduct of, like, who else is catching passes? Do you have running backs to catch passes? Do you have tight ends to catch passes? And I think, like, continued production from those two spots will help the wide receivers.
I mean, from a fantasy standpoint, Quincy and Robbie a little banged up. Robbie really came on strong at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But what kind of effect does Sam Darnold in year 2, assuming he makes the progressions that you saw from the end of the year into year 2, what kind of effect does that have on the team overall, no matter who's on the outside?
Sam's team now. It is. And not that it wasn't his team at some points last season, but until you're named the starting quarterback, which obviously happened much closer to week 1 than it did to the day he was drafted, his team. He gets to make a mark in the locker room. And Josh, obviously, was a tremendous tutor for him. Sam's team now, and his progression can turn one of those guys into our vision of what Robbie Anderson is as a player could change dramatically if Sam Darnold stays on the trajectory that I think we all expect for him going into year 2.
And just wrapping things up here with Field Yates of ESPN, what do you expect out of Sam Darnold in year 2?
I think a lot of what we saw in the final 5 weeks or so. Yeah, Adam Gase, certainly a good quarterback tutor, right? He's worked with a lot of different types of quarterbacks, which helps, right? Obviously, Peyton Manning is probably what he's most well known for.
The poster boy, let's say.
Right, but you've also got, he worked with a lot of other quarterbacks in between. I think he did pretty solid work with. So I would say this for specific to Sam Darnold, the last 5 or 6 weeks to me felt like the glimpse into the future. Will make better decisions, will be very accurate, can be nimble in the pocket mobility-wise, and can also throw on the run, which is an important trait in this league.
And if that is a glimpse into the Jets' future, I think Jets fans will be very happy about that field. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me on.
Enjoy the rest of your time in Indianapolis.
I'm going to go run a 40.
All right. Yeah, I'll see you there.
7 seconds.
Lucas Oil. 7
That's right.
seconds?
Something like that.
All right. Well, not everyone can be an athlete. Not everyone can be DK
That's
Metcalf with 12 abs.
That's right. Yeah, I know.
So,
we can all dream, though.
Yeah, a man can dream. It starts with a dream, and then it becomes reality. Field, thanks again.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
Enjoy it. This is Jets 360 Live here in Indianapolis, the Combine Special presented by Atlantic Health System. All right. That was Field Yates. We had Dane Brugler on of The Athletic. We kicked off the show with Kim Jones of NFL Network. And now we're going to wrap things up here shortly with Ralph Vacchiano of SNY. He'll be on in a minute. And when I say a minute, I mean literally a couple seconds. Ralph, how's it going?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. We're wrapping things up here with the all-Syracuse set.
Nice.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with that.
No. You got to have a little orange here in Indianapolis. So, all right, Ralph. Let's wrap things up here on Jets 360 Live Combine Special presented by Atlantic Health System. Yesterday, Adam Gase and Mike McCagnon spoke to the media. We talked a little bit about this with Kim Jones earlier, but what was your takeaway from both of those guys' pressers?
Well, I think that the takeaway, I didn't get a ton from Adam Gase. He's been pretty close to the vest. From Mike McCagnon, I think we got what we know, that he is going to be aggressive in free agency. He didn't say a lot of hints as to who he might go after. He didn't rule out Le'Veon Bell, which is the big prize, obviously. But they know that they have some holes to fill. They think they can fill them through free agency, with their high draft pick as well. They're going to bolster the offensive line if they get a chance, add some playmakers on offense. But, they think they have the room right now to make a big jump from last year's 4-12 record to what I would assume is a playoff contender this year.
So where do you think the Jets go first in free agency? Because Mike did say we're going to be active in free agency, and we'll talk about the draft a little bit. But where do you expect Mac to dip his toe first?
I'd be very surprised if they're not in on Le'Veon Bell to some extent. I think that they believe, which is kind of a surprise to me, they believe in their offensive playmakers a little more than I think the rest of the world does.
Yep.
They think that, and Adam Gase actually mentioned this, how smooth and good Robbie Anderson is as a receiver. They obviously like Quincy Enunwa since they re-signed him. I don't sense a real need from them to go out and find that number one receiver that I think they need, and a lot of people do, but they know they need some playmakers, and Le'Veon Bell certainly could be one of them. I would expect that, and I would expect offensive line to be the places that they really target first. Pass rusher is going to be a need as well. I don't know if I think that's something you can get in the draft. So my guess would be for free agency, the offensive side of the ball will be where their attention is.
All right, I want to take some Twitter questions. I tweeted yesterday asking for questions, and we got some questions, so we're going to take them. All right, so Jake wants to know, what do you think is more likely, the Jets draft an offensive lineman or defensive lineman in the first round?
I think a defensive lineman, assuming they stay at 3. Now, trading down is a very good possibility for the Jets. Mike McCagnon made it clear that that's an option for him. If they do that, then you might look at a Jonah Williams of Alabama, somebody like that. But I don't think there's an offensive lineman really worthy of the third pick, and there are so many good pass rushers. If you can get a Quinnen Williams at a defensive tackle or an edge rusher like Josh Allen, I think those are guys they'll consider. There's so many good ones at the top of the draft, and it's such a big need. I'd be surprised if they don't go in that direction. Also factor in that in free agency, the pass rushers are going to be hugely expensive. So if they can get a cheap one in the draft,
even get to the market.
Right, you can see a lot of guys franchise because they know how expensive they're going to be. So I think a pass rusher, a defensive lineman, an edge rusher will be their priority in the first round.
I want to talk about a position that maybe I think is going overlooked, because we talked about the defensive lineman, the offensive lineman, adding around Sam Darnold. I want to talk about the cornerbacks. Tremaine Johnson locked up, Morris Claiborne expiring contract, Darryl Roberts expiring contract. The team did not pick up the option on Terrence Brooks a couple weeks ago. I know he's a safety, but let's just talk about the defensive backs as a whole. Do you like the market in free agency for the Jets to try to add a cornerback? Because the Jets simply need bodies first. And I know that the Jets have a guy, also Buster Skrine expiring contract.
Right.
And Perry Nickerson last year, 6th-round pick, didn't see a whole lot of time, but it felt like he was almost being groomed to take over at nickel. But you don't know how he's going to play because he hasn't seen the field a lot.
Right.
So what do you think that this unit is going to look like, and how do you add to the unit, whether it be free agency or the draft?
Well, you're really talking about one spot, right? Because assuming Marcus May is healthy, you've got two safeties to build around for the future. Tremaine Johnson, as bad as he was at times last year, that contract makes him here for a while. So you're looking at one cornerback spot and then a nickel spot maybe that they'll have to fill. I can't see them going and spending big dollars in free agency. You're not going to look at the top of the line guys, but there's always going to be some bargains, especially at that position. I could see them trying to find a player like that. But then you're really looking at another Morris Claiborne, another Buster Screen, that type of guy that, maybe they bring back Claiborne for another year and take their chances there. I think they're better off if they look in the draft, not at the third pick, but let's say the second or third round, the second day, get a young cornerback to build around, somebody that can be next to Tremaine Johnson for a couple of years, could be able to step in for him. If his contract doesn't work out, you're going to look to cut him in a couple of years. Have a young cornerback ready to go. I don't know if they really have that right now. Maybe Perry Nickerson could be a guy that'll develop into that. But right now, if you wiped out the cornerbacks on the roster and said, okay, give me the young guy, who's that going to be? He's not there.
Do you think the Jets could trade down, assuming they find a partner, and take the top cornerback in this year's draft? Do you think that makes sense for this team?
I think they could. I mean, LSU's Greedy Williams, I guess, is the guy that everybody would target. They could probably get down as low as 10 maybe, and probably a little higher than that, but somewhere in that range and still be able to get him. You could do that if you add enough picks on the back end. I'd be a little leery of it only because of the pass rushers up top are so good, and it's such an important position. And as we said, if you don't fill it in the draft, you're going to be paying a ton of money in free agency for that. But depending on how low they drop, that's something they have to consider. At that point, let's say you get to 10, you then might have the choice between the number one cornerback on your board or the number 6 pass rusher on your board. And at that point, the value says cornerback. So it's something they'd have to consider.
All right, one final question here for Ralph Vacchiano, SNY. I didn't ask this question. I did not rig this question. It is a Syracuse question. And since we have the All-Syracuse set on here, on Jets 360 Live, presented by Atlantic Health System, I figured we're going to wrap up with a little Syracuse Orange talk.
Sure.
Perry wants to know, thank you for asking this, by the way, why is Pascal Chukwu still starting?
That is a really good question.
It is.
I don't know what their option is.
So that was going to be my point.
If you put him on the bench, what is your option? But, boy, I tell you what.
You and me. We can go out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd probably have to go on your shoulders, and we could be a little more effective than Pascal
at
times.
For I don't know how many years now, I've been dying for Syracuse to have a center with a little bit of bulk on him in the middle to stop some of those players. They go for the tall, lean guys with the long arms to
tall
and
lean
that zone.
Does not stop Zion Williamson.
No, exactly. You got to really play good defense, and I don't think he's that good defensively.
Well, that we had to have a little Syracuse talk on there.
Exactly.
Perry, thank you for asking that question. Well, that's all we have here on Jets 360 Live, the Combine Special presented by Atlantic Health System. Thank you to everyone that was on the show yesterday and today. Kim Jones of NFL Network, Dane Brugler of The Athletic, Field Yates of ESPN, wrapping things up with Ralph Vacchiano of SNY, and we'll see you back in Florham Park.